Tonight on the Cover One Buffalo podcast, we will break down some of the most recent moves by the NFL's rule changes, some things that happened since our last show, and our first guest from our Cover One draft show, Jon Helmkamp and Daniel Harms. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, the swivel hip drop tackle expert, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, tell the people what they should expect of this new rule.
I'm sorry, what? What is it? I honestly don't have super strong feelings about it. I thought you were gonna ask me how it's doing, first of all, and it's not great. I got some allergy stuff, so if you see me muting and just coughing, if you're watching, it's just sinuses. I apologize. But on the new rule, this one, Greg, was one of those ones where, you know me, I try to pump the brakes and not be super overreactionary, and I was like a lot of other people, I think, where it was, they're outlawing tackling and then football. This is dumb. And then I came back into reality. And I think listening to Brandon Beane talk about it, I think it was on Pat McAfee, and his idea, which I do think is probably how it will play out more, where it'll be not as much called in games unless it's totally egregious and you can totally see it, but more being things that are fined after the fact. That if that's how it plays out, that makes much more sense. But I think expecting officials that don't even know what a catch is or what pass interference is or what holding is to also get this rule right would be a mistake. So hopefully it's the latter, which Brandon Beane discussed, in that it will be, hey, if it happens and we're seeing it, we're going to then fine you and try to legislate it out of the game in that manner.
Yeah, there's a handful of rules to change. I think the new kick return rule is going to be kind of neat.
I like that one.
Serious. That one was fun to see in the XFL. We'll see how teams strategize in it and all the different things that go into that. There's some other stuff. We actually saw one that snuck by the hey, here's 25 grand to go wait in the parking lot special that we saw Andre Roberts and Reed Ferguson and guys have over the years. They basically got rid of that, and that now you're allowed to preemptively put two players on the in-season injured reserve, so you don't have to like cut two players, hide guys on the 53, then put them on the injured reserve, then re-sign those players. They saw that was just, manipulation and wasn't really, functional. So that was like a smart rule change. Another logical one that a lot of people just assumed was the rule. Now, if you get a challenge right, you get another challenge. You don't have to get both challenges right to get a third challenge. If you get one right, you get a new challenge. That's another one that was pretty logical. And the hip drop tackle, I think one, it's really dumb that they use the word swivel. Like, I don't think that's a logical word to think of in that
Not outside
motion.
of chairs, right?
Yeah, whatever it ends up being. I actually think for a rarity, if you watch the video that the NFL put out, it's actually super helpful. And you can see, oh, that's the difference. Because I know last year, as that started to get more momentum, you voiced a lot of frustration and like, well, that's just tackling. And that I actually think the video helps that what people think of, oh, the ugly, like nasty looking ones that cause injuries really is the whatever, for some reason, why they're calling a swivel hip drop tackle. And they use some super weird language in the writing of it that you unground yourself. I don't know that I was familiar with that, of ungrounding.
My son does that actually every time I punish him. He ungrounds himself.
He ungrounds himself.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I do think any skepticism over referees interpreting rules properly, I'm never going to push back on that. That is totally valid. I do think in general, the swivel hip drop tackle, the ones where they grab on, swing around, and like kick their legs up and then land on the guy. Yeah, that one we should remove from the game. And if they figure that out, that's good. in general, most of the rest of the stuff was no big deal.
On that though, Greg, and I don't think this is the case, but at what point, like, I think that move has come into play because of the lack of ability to horse collar, right? Like tackling from behind, you have now
so
limited. So like because that wasn't a thing so many years ago. We never really even heard about these.
I
And then
didn't
now,
know this. I want to give credit to I heard, I don't know who brought it up, but where I heard it was on the Ringer draft show. I was listening to Ben Solak, Danny Kelly, Daniel Heifetz, Craig Horlbeck. They brought up the fact that this was actually from rugby, and
Okay.
that it was introduced first in the NFL as a counter to the leading with the helmet. And that when you saw the penalties for leading with the helmet, some teams, they referenced the Seahawks in that they went to rugby to learn, hey, they don't wear helmets in that game. How do they tackle? And that some defensive teams, and that so that's only been around for about 10 or 15 years. This isn't something that's like been part of football our whole lives. And
Right.
it's a relatively new addition, and that more egregious level of it is the one that's causing injuries. And if they can eliminate just that, like grabbing onto somebody and pulling them down,
Sure.
it's like the horse collar. Like sometimes you reach and you grab, sometimes you grab the face mask on accident. We'll have a couple accidental ones now that like, hey, he didn't mean to do that. But getting guys to be like, hey, don't like kick your legs. They were having a whole conversation there that like the video shows it almost looks like a WWF move where you're like grabbing on and like kicking way up in the air and then pulling down and landing on them. And that doesn't look that
For
appropriate.
sure.
Like that's not something that you should see in an NFL game. So if they figure out how to just isolate that, that's great. Trusting these referees to do that. Yeah,
And I'm just wondering totally fine. Get that out of the game. Get horse collars out of the game. Get leading with your helmet out of the game. But then what does it lead to? Because there's going to be some other one that happens and it causes some crazy injuries, and then we're going to legislate that out of the game. And then my concern as a football fan is at what point can we not legislate some of this? Like they're going to find something else, some other technique, because you're taking techniques away from defenders more and more as time goes on, and it's getting harder for defenders about it's because it happens fast. And so like you still have those mistakes of people leading with their helmet. You still have, to your point, face masks and horse collars. You're still gonna have some of this stuff, but as you try to get away from that, I guess what's next and what's going to be that next thing? And I don't know at what point does it start to not look like the football that we've always known.
Yeah. So one last quick announcement before we bring on our friends Daniel and John from the Cover One Draft Show. Aaron and I made an announcement earlier tonight. You'll see it down at the bottom corner of the screen. We have reached an agreement with a new sponsor for our show all year long, off-season and in-season content. Our friends over at William Mattar Law Offices. You guys know them from their famous slogan, hurt in a car, call William Mattar. I will say I credit them for a really fun presence online. Has done some really fun things, with the pit and the stadium, and that has a really fun presence there. I think that's going to make it a fun part to partner with us and to be able to do some cool things with them online and sponsor the show. We're going to have a new sponsored segment going forward. Maybe that banner over
Pump
your
the brakes.
Pump the brakes.
Finally might pay off.
Yeah. So really, really exciting. We couldn't be happier to work with such a well-known brand across all of New York State, and somebody who's helped so many families. So you'll hear that slogan a lot of like, we're here to help. How can we, make good decisions, do those things that he helps you do. And maybe that could be new additions to the team, new strategies for it, new signings, new draft picks, all kinds of things that will now be brought to you by William Mattar Law Offices. And we couldn't be prouder to work with them.
Absolutely.
All right. So without further ado, we will bring up to the stage our friends Daniel Arms and Jon Helmkamp. How are we doing, gentlemen?
Oh, doing good. I'm doing
Why don't
good.
you go?
Nice
Why don't you go, Dan?
Yeah, I'm going to. Actually, I even know who William Mattar is. It sounds catchy. I live in Missouri. I'm originally from Michigan and lived in California, so I've heard the name before. So listening to you guys, I actually talk about that was kind of funny that I was able to recognize who that was. But don't be offended, everybody. I know that this is a bit of a shock if you haven't seen me on the channel before. Yes, I covered the Kansas City Chiefs. There we go. There we go. There it is. I was waiting for it. I knew it was coming at some point. But try to do what we do when some people we don't like in the movie industry. You don't like how they are off the screen, enjoy how they are on the screen. Try to just enjoy the draft coverage that we've got going for you.
I'll take the mantle from here. I am a lifelong Bills fan since October, and I can personally vouch that Daniel Harms here provides great analysis. He doesn't hold it against me that I'm a Bills fan. I don't hold it against him too much that he's a Chiefs fan. Other than times where we're playing against each other. So basically, in the Cover One group chat, I'm pretty sure he just decided to mute the chat and stay away for about a week after the Super Bowl. And then he started to kind of like creep back in a little bit here and there. So very kind to stay out and not just rub it in our faces. We appreciate that. While we sit here and try to draft a team that's going to dismantle his. Let's do it.
Obviously. So obviously, as you guys can hear, both Daniel and Jon, great personality, a lot of fun, great chemistry together on the show. We'll have the link in our show breakdown here. But as you're getting yourself ready for, more content as you're ramping up for the draft, people like Aaron and I who stay pretty in mode as the season goes, like focused on the NFL, watching some college games. Aaron obviously watches a lot of Michigan games. I watch, a big game each weekend, but I'm not plugged in. And then I stay pretty in tune with, free agency research and things like that. And I pivot right around this time of year, like the last week or so, I start diving in deep and I start watching all of the Cover One Draft Weekly. I start reading all the different work. I start taking in all the different draft podcasts and all the different shows and basically treat it like the college class that I skipped when I was in school, and I'm cramming right before the final, trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And guys like Daniel and Jon can help you get caught.
I was going to say, I think I can speak for both of us, Greg, in that all the years that we've been doing this portion of the off season, we put way more time into it in previous years, but then we get frustrated about how wrong and how much time we put into it. And then we're like, hey, we got together and we're like, hey, we got smart guys on the team that love doing this stuff. Let's just talk to them. Let's have them come on and have help us out here. So we've pumped back our, because we really prioritize, to your point, we prioritize that free agency period, and it's just so much to go through. So you got guys that are into college football all year long, doing great work. It makes sense. Work smarter, not harder, baby. That's all I'm saying.
So, Daniel, let's start with you. We'll start with some high-level topics just on the draft in general, and we'll go on one end of the spectrum for you and on the other end for Jon. What are some of the positions that you see the most value in this year? We see different years where, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the first one at this position didn't go till the third round, or I can't believe we're going to set a record for this many in the first round or the first 2 days at this position. And that does pivot each year. Some is with interest and value from the league in that looking for more of that position, and some is just the natural ebb and flow of where talent comes from. So on the high end, whether it's the number of elite prospects or the depth of like the day one, day two guys, what are some of the positions that you've seen the biggest pockets of value in this year's draft?
Yeah, everyone kind of hears the talk about the wide receiver and the tackle group, right? Like this is one of those years that is going to go up against like the 2014 draft. That's what everyone wants this year to be for the wide receivers. And it's not just even in the first round. It's going to be that they could legitimately set the record for number of wide receivers drafted in the first round. And then you can get guys on day two in the second, in the third round, into the fourth round that are going to be starters for years and years to come. And there's just so much depth. There's so much talent. And one of the things that I've really focused on with wide receiver over the past few years is these kids are coming into high school playing 7-on-7 already. They're already learning how to manipulate corners, how to catch the football away from their body, hide their hands, manipulation with their head, their shoulders. So they come into high school already knowing how to do all this stuff. And that's why we're seeing all these wide receivers now. And you see defenses last year in the NFL specifically say, okay, all right, we're going to put tops on. You guys move the ball little by little. And last year, offenses took a little bit of step back. And so this wide receiver class is going to help a lot of those offenses inject some more talent, some more explosivity, some more speed, just overall natural talent into that. And then on the tackle side, I think it's a really high-end top class. There's a lot of first rounders, and this is another position I think that they could set the record for total number of tackles selected in the first round. And there's going to be a lot of developmental guys later, but from the first 1 through maybe 7, 8 to 9 tackles taken, could all be perennial 10-year starters in the NFL. And it's a really good right tackle class, a really good left tackle. So you have a lot of these guys that they might consider moving inside, which, you know, I don't love that idea. I hate it, honestly, especially for some guys like Troy Fatanu, or I'm going to get frustrated. So I'm going to go off.
I don't know if you're aware of this, Daniel, but every tackle that struggles, all you need to do is move them inside. That's all you need to do.
All you have to do.
All you do is move them inside. Everything's good.
Everything's fine, and they don't even have to learn anything. They just know what they're doing, right? It's just
what slide inside. Everything's fine.
So yes, there's a lot of
same stunts.
Interior. Honestly, yeah, just do whatever you want. If you have a guard that's got long arms, throw him a tackle. He'll be fine.
Sure.
Just whatever. Throw him at center. He snapped the ball before. Okay.
Then he'll be fine.
And honestly, the offensive line in general, I think interior, center, there's a lot of centers, really good centers. Lately, we've seen some guys get drafted, and they're coming out, and they're all of a sudden starters. Tyler Linderbaum, Creed Humphrey. You've got multiple guys in the NFL that are starting at center, and they're just being really, really good. So, and then an underrated position that I think is deep, but it's not top heavy, is the running back position. There's a lot of really talented players, but this is like the same every year. There's no ones that are going to be out there, really, in my opinion, that are just going to take over backfields and be on the 3-down workhorse. The NFL is run by committees. That's what it is. And this is a beautiful draft to need committee backs, because you've got guys like Blake Corum, who is a fantastic do-it-all running back, but maybe he's not, the fastest guy in the world, and he's got a lot of wear and tear. You have some guys like Isaac Guerrero out of Louisville, who tested off the charts. And then a guy like Braylon Allen, who honestly offer the same kind of skill set with the speed, the power, more of a runway back. And you can find these guys on day 2 and into day 3. There's so many different flavors at running back, and you're going to be able to get contributors all the way into the 5th, 6th, probably even the 7th round UDFAs. So that's what I would say in terms of the top end, and then some of the deeper position groups.
And then
new rule though, because you're a Michigan fan. And for everyone who's listening, he's a Michigan fan. Daniel is. So Aaron, you and Daniel can talk. I'm an Oregon fan. Every time you mention Blake Corum, I'm going to mention Troy Franklin. We're just going to set that as a ground rest of the show. Okay,
those are just two very different things. Just so you know, like one's for very sure going to be a stud, and I don't know on the other. Anyway,
you're right. It's Troy Franklin, sure for sure.
Oh, come on. Well, anyway, I got a question for you, sir. Sort of just flip it, the opposite side of the spectrum here. If you were looking for a certain position, but is not stacked in this draft, and you have to do something early, or you're going to miss out because it just doesn't deep. What are the positions in this draft that you're seeing that just is not flush this year?
Well, it's really interesting because my mind immediately goes to the safety class. I don't know that it's you have to do something early or you're going to miss, so much as it is that there's just no one that is really standing out head and shoulders above the rest. And you can maybe say Cam Kinchins is that guy depending on what you want in your safety, but it's going to depend on the prototype of safety that you're looking for. Want that rangy ball hawk on the back end? Or are you looking for a guy that can come down into the box, a guy that you can kind of move around in defensive alignments, that can maybe come down and play like some nickel or something like that, can man up against a tight end? Kind of like the running back conversation. There's different prototypes throughout this draft class. And I don't think you have to take one early. I know safety is a big conversation for us Bills fans this year. I almost don't love the idea of going safety at 28. I know that was a kind of a buzzy conversation like a month or two ago amongst Bills fans, but looking at how things are shaken out, I don't think there's anyone that you need to reach for there at 28. I think with all picks between round 2 and 4, and maybe even in round 5, depending on how teams have their boards, one team's safety 2 might be another team's safety 10, just based on the style of play that they're looking for. Safety is a real interesting one there, with a kind of a lack of a top end. Linebackers in one kind of like sneaky good this year, but no one's kicking the door down to make a run at being drafted early. So those are kind of two positions that I think aren't going to get a lot of love early on in the draft. I think you might start seeing those picks kind of flush out the late day 2, early day 3 board for a lot of these NFL teams.
So a little bit of news that's come up the last bit here, and obviously, the Bills fans listening here we've seen this in previous years where Brandon Bean. It's fairly rare that we go in with just a gaping need in this one area. That oh my gosh, it has to be this one spot, and we know that when that's happened, there's been some spots of the year that Tremaine Edmonds went, there was no answer at linebacker. But last year, people thought that was the exact same thing, and all of a sudden Terrell Bernard actually was the answer at linebacker. So I think the signings that have taken place this year, you bring back Daquan Jones, and then this weekend you add Austin Johnson. So now that's a little more solidified there. You have 2-1 texture in better shape. We did lose Leonard Floyd, but brought back AJ Epinesa and now signed Casey Toohill. Casey Toohill, we found out, actually signed for literally like a minimum contract, not even a lot of incentives or upside. The additions at wide receiver, both Curtis Samuel and Mac Hollins, like two professionals who can come in and play the roles that they need, very different, probably a wide receiver 2 or 3 and a more of a wide receiver 5-6 with special teams ability, but still filling roster spots. That last year that might have been a Deontay Hardy and a Trent Sherfield, and that now you have those spots. And some of the different pieces that we've seen in these different areas of the team, what was going into the offseason, it has to be this position. And like at one point, Ed Oliver was literally the only defensive tackle under contract. Now it's a little more open. So tonight's exercise as we go through, we'll kind of play it where Aaron and I are kind of the position coaches and the regional scouts in the room, kind of trying to sway you guys like, oh hey, how about this position or what's there, and we'll alternate. We'll let you guys go back and forth each round of who makes the picks, but we'll do a mock draft with the Bills in mind. Daniel will obviously try to tank everything and pick the worst player possible for the Bills. John, you'll try to pick the best players. We'll go through. You guys know, I think most fans are going to have it where wide receiver, safety, edge rusher, interior offensive line, maybe a 3-tech, like those 5 still kind of are in that upper tier, but you can make a pretty good case for the order. Like there are people who will argue all 5 of those positions as the highest need. They're like, oh, if Jackson Powers Johnson's there, like, hey, take your center of the future and just plug him in. Or some people feel like Tyler Nubin is worthy of a first round pick, or some people are, hey, wide receiver trained, no matter what, it has to be that. Or hey, if one of the top 3 edge rushers fall, we do that, but if it's not one of those, we'll wait until later. And everything kind of has these rhythms that people get used to. You guys study. So Aaron and I know those narratives. Those are the narratives we know of. You guys know these prospects a little bit better, some of the different pieces there. So I think this will be a fun exercise for everybody.
Are we keeping all 11 picks here before we get into this? And if we are we on a time clock? Because these mock drafts have taken me forever this year.
We'll pull it up here. We'll see how we can keep things moving along from a content standpoint.
Well, and I'm just saying, are we in trade mode, or are we going to wait on trade mode?
I think it's okay. And I think it's good because we'll have this discussion, especially with the 4 of us here. We can kind of go back and forth in that if there isn't if there's an obvious pick, that's easy. I think that's the best case scenario. There's an obvious pick, you run to the podium, everybody's happy. If there's not, that also doesn't mean, like, I think what some people struggle with is, let's say it's not, and let's say that the top 3 edge rushers and the top 2 defensive tackles and maybe 6 wide receivers and go, and all of a sudden it's the Bills, and like the weird position that fell was offensive tackle or corner, or a spot that has value but isn't what the Bills were looking for. That also doesn't mean that somebody's offering you a trade to come up. There might not be a good trade. So I think the machine here will let it go. If somebody makes us an offer that is worthwhile, we'll consider it.
I only want to trade up. Also, by the way,
obviously trade up. Romadoons, we trade up wide receiver only. That's the obvious answer. All right, so we'll go in here. I just said all their nodules in the middle here. I leave it a little bit more towards the public than just the PFF board. I'll do one more click down here, and I'll make it.
I'm so excited right now. This is going to be so fun. Like, this is just fun. I'm a kid in a candy store. This is great.
I will say, like, now that I've started and kind of broke the seal on doing mock drafts, I waited the whole time. I did my first one Saturday. I've also done like 112 since Saturday.
Did McCarthy go third? Did they just have JJ McCarthy go third?
Every mock that I've done today, JJ McCarthy's gone third. Every one that I've done.
Oh my God, that's gross. If JJ,
which by the way, Daniel and I are going to be talking about. We're talking about it tomorrow night. Daniel and I are recording tomorrow night, and we're talking about Bucky Brooks draft. and he had that mock where JJ went above Drake May. Well, they don't even have.
They have
Oh, wow.
May there.
Okay. Jaden Daniels
was Jaden Daniels was 3,
okay.
and May fell all the way to 11. It was
if Marvin Harrison
Yeah.
gets Minnesota. Oh my god.
Oh, that would be
if they get,
but yeah, that's
Justin
what we're going to be
Jefferson
talking about
and
tonight.
Marvin
So
Harrison. Good Lord.
Yeah, shut the front door on that one. Thank God in the NFC.
So here we go. We'll go through here. Obviously, a lot of the different picks here from the players the Bills are looking for. We know those top receivers are going to go right off the bat. Byron Murphy is a buzzy name that isn't going to fall. Johnny Newton is one that obviously has come up a fair amount. Some people have wondered about Cooper Jean, sliding to safety. A.D. Mitchell and Brian Thomas Jr., 2 of the size speed combo guys, both of them going, and even Darius Robinson coming here in the as an edge rusher. So the guys who are up here
is Latu? When you were scrolling, I didn't see Latu.
Latu did go early. I didn't mention him.
Super early. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So looking at some of the spots here, I'm actually going to bring this down one, so I can filter a little bit better. So let's look at some of the top positions. So McConkey, obviously John's friend, Troy Franklin, any of the other guys still in pretty normal range there at wide receiver. From an edge standpoint, Braswell and Chop Robinson, again, both of the top defensive, interior defensive guys went. So Braden Fisk is the highest there. From a safety standpoint, obviously Nubin, or if anyone else, depending on the order that people feel there. From an interior O-line, Jackson Powers Johnson is there on the board. So this would be one where, I think some people would make the case for JPJ, Nubin taking the preference of some of the receivers if someone feels strong about one of the other safeties, or we're being offered a trade down to 30. I don't think 57 or 108 would be there, but a trade down to 30 is intriguing. So we'll start with you, John. What is a player here that speaks to you that you think would be worth the pick at 28, or would you be advocating for a trade down?
I think in a situation like this, I'd be looking to potentially trade down. What was the trade offer for 30? Does it come with the whole package deal, or are they just saying, hey, it's an option for you?
It goes through where, something like that looks like it'd get approved, where they'd pick up a third if they give them the later fourth, something along those lines.
I would love that option to get another round 3 pick at this point, because right now what we're looking at is we only have pick 60 on day 2, and then a whole bunch of day 3 picks. So being able to get back up into the third round. Yeah, 9. This is like a perfect scenario for something that looks super realistic. It's not crazy flashy or anything like that, but I don't think there's anyone that you have to jump at here. I love JPJ, and I think there's a real argument to be made there, but it's not a crazy pressing need. And I really like day 3 or round 3 options that are available in a lot of the positions in need, especially like wide receiver. There's still going to be some guys available there. Safeties, I think, are going to be in play in round 3 as well. So that would be something that I'd be advocating for here.
Daniel, do you feel strongly about one of the candidates, or do you like that option, or is there someone here screaming value at pick 28?
I'm still extremely high on Nate Wiggins, and I know that cornerback necessarily might not be everyone's go-to position of need for the Bills. I just, when you were talking about lockdown players, like the one area that I think that the Bills can still improve upon is at corner at the lockdown position. I think Nate Wiggins is maybe the best cover corner to come out of Clemson in the last, 5-10 years, and that's saying something for a team that's done a lot of developing and getting those guys drafted. So, I'm not saying you have to draft a Nate Wiggins, especially if the size concerns. I don't know if what the thresholds are for the Bills corners specifically. I know that they typically like their bigger physical guys to an extent. So that would probably be something that throws off. But, and you're going to trade, I think trading down 2 spots and still getting a guy like JPJ makes a ton of sense to be able to jump up back into that 3rd round as well. So you're still getting a guy who also has guard flexibility down the road too, and he can play all 3 positions on the interior. If you can get him at 30, I think makes a lot of sense.
All right, this one, let's go that route, see what we get back here. Aaron, do you feel strongly to veto this, or do you like the option to trade down?
I have no strong feelings on this. It would depend who they're trying to come up and get. Because to Daniel's point, it would be for me moving back these spots, getting that third rounder, and still taking JPJ and getting out of there, because I still don't trust the current setup of the Bills' offensive line that we're being told that it's going to be. I'd love to kick David Edwards back into that extra offensive lineman situation and get somebody a little bit more stout and get somebody in there that's young. So I would still be targeting that position here, or a Christian Hayes in the second round. So it really depends what they're going to do, but I guess we won't find out till we make this move here.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's how I feel about JPJ also.
GMs.
I think he's a plug and play day one starter at center for the next 10 years. I love him. Run, pass, everything. He's awesome.
Ooh. So
situation
traded up for Kool-Aid.
Yeah. It worked out.
That's
they
such a
moved up here
Baltimore pick. It's such a Baltimore pick. Even the trade calculators are like, yeah, let's go get that Alabama guy.
Yeah, not Nate Wiggins. F that noise. Yeah, moving on.
So I'll open it up here.
JPJ.
I think, again, that this is one of those picks where a lot of folks will be like, yes, this is fantastic. We can plug him in. He's going to be in front of Josh Allen for a decade. And there will be people who see this. And when we post this online, and I will tag you in the picture, we're going to get yelled at for taking a center. And we're going through here. But
I'm not scared of those people.
He's too high of a value to not take here. And the fact that we got to trade down and got him back, I think, is an easy choice.
Hey, if I'm getting at least one of my Oregon boys at pick now 30, I'll be very happy about it. JPJ, I love him. Personality, shift, all the traits you want in a starting center, just a lockdown dude. I think he's going to be great. He would be the rare offensive lineman jersey that I would buy. I think that would be one that I would definitely put in the closet.
So just a quick pause here, because I want to show
one
of the challenges that goes.
Oh, Xavier Worthy, Kansas City off.
Kick Daniel out of here.
No.
Yeah.
Giving the fastest player in combine history to Patrick Mahomes, nothing bad could come of that. There's no chance that could be a problem. I think Aaron kicked Daniel out of the draft. But this is a good point where when you do go with the value pick early, one of the challenges is, do they now look to move up from 60, because there will be a run between there and 60 at receiver. So we now had Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, and Xavier Legette all go, and it puts you into a just a challenging position to be.
Baker's going to be here for us.
The drafts are where the picks are.
I trust that Javon Baker will be there.
So I've been watching
here too.
So Javon Baker is a strong prospect.
Purcell
However,
already. That's
is it Pearsall or Purcell?
Purcell.
Jon and Daniel know Pearsall. Okay.
Pearsall.
However, we have now made it to pick 51, and there's another Oregon Duck still there at pick 51. So it's getting close to where, depending on how they have them ranked, you start to get to where, hey, how much does it cost to move up, 8 picks in the second round? Is that like a 4th or a 5th rounder? Like, is that doable? How much you have to give up in the late second round? It's, in those areas where that would be intriguing to move up a little bit and to go to Pittsburgh and say, hey, for 51 and 60, what if we gave you 144 and 189? Or like, how much would that cost to be able to go up? Could you do it? There's a later 4th, some of the different picks you could move up and secure that. Or so Aaron, you will manage our value from this standpoint. Would you want to give that up, or would you roll the dice that someone will still be there?
I think at this point, if it's between Franklin, Baker,
Jalen Polk is still there. Jalen Polk has not gone yet.
I'm big on Roman Wilson too. I wouldn't hate him for the Bills. So I think there's enough options, and there's also going to be some other guys here that I might also pound the table for. I know we got to walk out of here with a receiver or we're dead. But let's find out.
So the 2 picks in a row went Wilson and Franklin. Okay. Okay, I think we survived.
I think we're all right.
Yeah. I
We
think we're
get to
okay.
this spot. We've got Jermaine Burton, Jalen Polk,
Big no
Devontae
on
Walker,
Walker.
Javon Baker, all there. So we've got some options there. At safety, we had Kitchens made it. So you've got that chance. So I know you guys mentioned some of the depth there at safety as a sneaky one. That's one that's still floating there. Interior D line, Jenkins.
I do like Jenkins.
Uh,
My thing that I've been coming up with, and we didn't mention it when we talked about some of the positions that aren't as flush in this draft, and maybe I'm wrong here. I'm trying to walk away with another edge player, and I feel like if I'm not jumping on that in these first couple of rounds, that I kind of missed the boat. Is that?
Yeah. Can you guys tell me a little bit? Marshawn Nealand, he's a name that I don't know anything about Western Michigan football, but I've seen his name coming up more in this area. Have you guys had a chance to do much work on him yet?
There's not much film out there for Western Michigan, specifically for what I'm able to watch. But the reason that he's coming up is because teams want those 30 visits with him because they want more information. There's not enough out there for them to really know much, but tested out off the charts. Where I work at rgrfootball.com, my co-host and boss, Ryan, does the athletic matrix over there, and he popped as one of the best, most athletic edges in this class through all of the testing and everything like that. So that is, again, it's a play on upside for a guy who's probably not the most refined player because he's playing at Western Michigan and the development process isn't there. But again, if you're looking for a developmental prospect on day 2, you saw the names on at edge there. It gets very, very slim, very, very quick. And this is already a draft class that's not a strength at defensive end.
Yeah.
So, John, I know we missed out on Troy Franklin. I was open to a duck double combo, double dip there if he had made it.
Thank you.
Out of the remaining guys here,
Speaking of duck double combo, is that 3 in a row right there in this mock draft? Right there.
It is. Yep. Yeah. Kyrie Jackson. That seems really early for Kyrie. I thought that.
Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, and Kyrie Jackson all at once. Out of this next tier, which is getting a little bit of the less buzzy names, but guys that I still have seen a lot of intriguing. A lot of my initial work in wide receivers will be on the analytics side and looking at some of the different pieces from that side, because that drives me of, hey, which guys to look at first, who fits some of the previous archetypes and different areas they've looked at. There are some things that flash for specifically this group: Jermaine Burton, Jalen Polk. I won't lie, I have not done anything on Jalen McMillan, Devontae Walker, and Javon Baker. Those 4, there are some skill sets with the outside ability, some of the play speed more than maybe the testing speed all the time. Are any of those 4 guys that you think could be an option or a pick that would make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that out of this group, man, Tez Walker has just dropped like a rock. And speaking of dropping like a rock, he dropped everything during Senior Bowl week. It was really rough. But he is your very just run straight outside, is going to be pretty quick, but not blazing fast. And I think that defenders are going to be able to get their hands on him at the next level. And I think that he offers less than some of the other guys in this class. Javon Baker, I really like. I think that he's a lot of fun. He can go up and get it. I think that Jalen Polk is a very, very interesting candidate for the Bills here at pick 60. He's an outside wide receiver, but he has decent route running. He's got length at 6'2". He can high point the ball incredibly well. He can go up and get it. He's got just arrogant hands in a lot of situations. So I think he's one of those wide receivers where if you want someone that can be a little bit of that jump ball wide receiver, he kind of fits that mold. He's obviously not in the same tier as some of the earlier guys, but if we have an elite option available to us at the end of the first round, waiting until pick 60 to go wide receiver, I think there's a really good chance that Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, and Jalen McMillan, probably 2 of those 3, I think are probably still going to be on the board for the Bills at this point in the draft, if not some of the other guys that if someone falls, like if a Keon Coleman falls because people have questions about his production profile and stuff like that, I mean, great, fantastic. Let's take that pick at 60. But I think if we're looking at an option like this is a wide receiver that can contribute, that can fill a little bit of a void left maybe by a Gabe Davis sort of thing. Not necessarily someone that you're banking on being a potential wide receiver one someday. And I think Bills Mafia really has it in their head that we need the succession plan behind Stephon Diggs right now. And you don't have to have that coming out of this draft. Like, you already have Stephon Diggs. You have other guys. We have a Joe Brady, an offensive coordinator that wants to work intermediate, that wants to work underneath, that wants to get the ball to the playmakers and let them go. I don't know that you need to walk out of this draft with a future stud wide receiver one. Now, hey, if a trade presents itself and we can go up and get Roma Dunze, I will cry happy tears in the streets of Detroit, and it would be incredible. But if we walk out of here with Jalen Polk, Roma Dunze's teammate, I think that he's a really good wide receiver and that he'd fill a good role on this offense.
So, Daniel, do one of those four guys stand out further to you than the others? It sounds like John's fairly open. There's cases for each of them. Do you think one of them is specifically a higher graded prospect, or someone that you think would be a better fit for what the Bills are looking for?
I personally think that Burton or Polk make a lot more sense given the roster construction of the receivers that you have. Where Burton and Polk both could just be the X receiver. I know people think Javon Baker is an X. I have him more as an Amon-Ra St. Brown type player. I prefer him in the slot, a power slot. You can win from the outside, but he's going to be better in space, in my personal opinion. And Polk doesn't drop anything at all. That dude doesn't drop the football. And if you look at, again, with Shakir and you bring in Curtis Samuel, you already have Stephon Diggs. Put in Jalen Polk as your X receiver, a guy who doesn't need to create separation to catch the football. And we know Josh Allen does not care about corners draped on anybody. He will throw the football down the field to you. He just wants you to catch it. I think that Jalen Polk, and he's actually my highest graded receiver left in this range on my own personal wide receiver rank. So I would go Polk.
He's my highest left on the board too at this point. I think Jalen Polk to me is the top of that group of wide receivers.
Aaron, any strong thoughts against Jalen Polk? Or are you good with that as our wide receiver investment?
My only strong thought is that I'm still not in the camp that, like, I'm in a mindset that positionless wide receiver exists nowadays in the NFL, and that I care more about separation than I do about the idea that we need a big boundary receiver to be covered and be able to catch the ball. But with that said, I'm going to trust my draft guys and take the mixture of BPA plus need, which is clearly everybody's consensus is Jalen Polk here. So I'm for, I think that's good draft strategy to mix BPA and need and walk away.
And a guy that still tested well, still has some size. And honestly, once Daniel said that he doesn't ever drop anything, I was sold. So
he's not a bad route runner either. I don't want to paint him as a guy who doesn't separate at all. He's a good route runner for his size as well. So that's not
pains me to see Chris Jenkins off the board now, though.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with a couple of Michigan guys. This is fun.
Yeah. Oh, dude, my mock drafts have a lot of ends.
Oh, we were so close. I almost paused it because Kitchens had fallen far enough where I was like, well, maybe we should move up for him. But let's put this to the test because I know you guys brought this up.
Double-digit receiver there with Corley, no?
As a spot. So obviously still some guys, in that range. We've already checked off wide receiver and interior offensive line so far, but you could invest again there. I know you guys mentioned some of the depth at safety. So Kalen Bullock's still there, Dadrian Taylor, Demerson, Tyke Smith, Cole Bishop. I saw the testing today for Malik Mustafa. I was more focused on the fact when he took his shirt off, he looked like a superhero. Like I was like, holy crap, how is that guy built like that? Good Lord. And then I think had a 42-inch vertical or something insane.
And we all agree James
41 and a half
safety, right? Why are we still doing this? Why is he still listed as a safety?
He does check a ton of the Bills' normal boxes here. Austin Booker is the top available edge from an interior defensive line. Michael Hall and Dwayne Carter, both who I think have some potential.
And Leonard Taylor and McKinley Jackson.
I was going to say McKinley Jackson being right there.
Yeah, so
there's a lot of...
Boyd had a nice Senior Bowl. You guys were down there, didn't he play?
Back-to-back offensive opening. It would make sense to look at some of that. We'll start with you, Daniel. Who is a pick that speaks to you here? If we kept on the defensive side, we'll look at safety, edge, and interior. What are some of the names that speak to you here that would make sense?
Oh man. So this is a dream scenario for me personally because Dwayne Carter is actually my defensive tackle 2 in this class.
Ooh.
Over John.
Ooh.
I
Wow,
love
that's bold.
what he brings. And again, that's probably a spicy take, but I'm a big fan of Dwayne Carter. I think he's actually much more versatile from a pass rushing perspective than he gets credit for. And he can come in and be a legitimate run stuffer as well from multiple positions. From 0 out to 5 tech, I think he can play and be really versatile player. So I'm a big fan of Dwayne Carter. Again, if you're going to safety, Bill's probably more too high safety. They don't want to necessarily go single high, right? Like
We're not sure yet because of the change. Obviously, so John Butler left, who was a longtime secondary coach, new defensive coordinator with Bobby Babich, and 2 new secondary coaches coming in. And some of the guys coming in came from more of a man match background. So we don't know exactly what to take from that, but it certainly is a possibility that we could see at least some
I
transition.
will say Bean said this week something that stood out to me in talking about Edwards and saying, I don't necessarily agree with him on rap, but saying that both those guys fit what they like to do with safeties and what they've been doing with safeties, which made me think they're maybe going to keep it somewhat similar. But again, I don't agree that is rap's strength to necessarily go back and do any of that stuff, but we'll see.
So, John, Daniel made a good case for Dwayne Carter. Are any of the safeties here guys that you would put above that, or do you think that's a good fit for what we need? Obviously having that 4th piece, if you could add a Dwayne Carter with Ed Oliver, Austin Johnson and Daquan Jones, that would kind of round out that room nicely. Do you think one of these safeties speaks to the value there? We would need to wait a little while longer, although we could move up a little because we have 3 picks back to back to back, 128, 133, 144, where you could move up a little bit if one of the safeties started to fall out of that top group.
I'm also a really big Dwayne Carter guy. I think that he's awesome. I think that he would be really strong as a 3 tech. I think that he fits that role incredibly well. I love Daniel that you said that he's your DT2. I love that. I don't have him at that high, but we're talking about a 3rd round pick here for a guy that he's my defense tackle 6 right now on my board, but still a really good asset to be able to put inside that has versatility. I would like that pick a lot. I am pretty high on Malik Mustafa, but I think defensive tackle might be kind of drying up a little bit, and still a lot of safeties here on the board. So looking at the board, I'm inclined to go Wayne Carter. My brain just for everyone watching, 3/4 of the show is like feeling like crap today. So I'm like in a fog of cold medicine. So I was like, what's his name? Dwayne Carter, the guy that we just talked about 5 times. But yeah, I love that pick.
This kind of pick goes back to exactly what we just did, where I think the need plus BPA overshoots safety, right? Because also with the way the Bills play defense, if you stack up that defensive line, it's going to help the safeties of if it is Rapp and Edwards, which are, you can start those guys and have a good defense. But if you're going to start those guys, you need to get at the quarterback. And so if you're going to do that, bring in a guy that can penetrate in the interior. I think that just makes sense and lines up with BPA plus need, because you still need at least one more body behind that Oliver there.
Yeah. So it got really tight towards the end there, but Mustafa did make it along with James Williams to the next pick back. It did get tight at the end there because we were getting close, and then Bishop and Bullock went right beforehand. But we did make it back. So again, really nice option on the board. I know with some of the upcoming picks here, we'll look getting a size speed guy to pair with James Cook would make sense. So again, we pick again in 5 picks right after this. So Braylon Allen, Will Shipley, Garendo, all in play there. We did not look at edge yet. And again, that gets kind of weird here. So just some names to keep in mind as some options coming here. But I would say the fact that Mustafa made it would be the leading candidate for me. Daniel, we'll start with you. Anyone that looks intriguing here at some of the top picks that you would take over that, or a position that maybe you think we should look at?
Man, I'll be very honest. I'm not as familiar with these cornerbacks that I'm seeing as I probably should be. So that's on me to get kind of figured out. But I think that, safety. Well, I want to ask you guys, do you think that corner is more of a need than safety at this point? Or are you guys kind of comfortable with your cornerback room?
I'm looking at it like in this draft class, I would like to find a safety, but it'd be nice if they could be, because I think I'm comfortable with a Rapp and Edwards and even Hamlin as a backup safety, or if they want to be Cam Lewis, but maybe somebody that can be versatile enough to play some nickel in a pinch. If something happened, we've seen Taron Johnson not be able to stay on the field at times. I think there's some guys in this safety class that could come in and play nickel and be that run defender that Taron's able to do and still be in coverage. So there's a need there, but also I would still be every one of these rounds looking to double dip at wide receiver if something's still available, and always checking that wide receiver room, because there's still the need for bodies in that room going forward here.
So my two in that position discussion, and so Anthony Prohaska, who obviously does disguise coverage in the film room for us, has made a case recently about, hey, maybe corner should be a little bit more of a need than what people think. The way that I would view it is long term. Rasul Douglas is on has 1 year left on his deal, is 30. He'll turn 31. So obviously there's some planning that needs to take place there. Regardless of who we draft, I don't see anyone at corner at any pick that we make, maybe short of maybe if you saw, I drew a blank, the guy that we considered at 28, Higgins, or the guy from Clemson, Wiggins, that we considered at 28, maybe he could, but I don't think any corner has any chance of coming in and starting over Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, and Taron Johnson. They're going to be the starters. I think it's absolutely possible that a safety could come in and potentially beat Taylor Rapp or Mike Edwards or Cam Lewis or DeMar Hamlin and play. I think that it's going to be Hamlin and Edwards, or that it's going to be Mike Edwards and Taylor Rapp, but the contract that they gave Taylor Rapp certainly says to me that, hey, maybe you could be safety 3. The contract that they gave Mike Edwards certainly isn't like, oh, you're absolutely the starter day 1. So I think it's way more likely that a safety could come in and compete for a starting spot than at corner, but the long-term investment and the positional value, I won't be upset if they take a corner, because I want to have that developmental element. Plus they still have Kyer Elam sitting there. Like if there's any hope of rekindling any value there, he is still sitting there as an outside asset. So I would much rather have that side of it as an investment. And I've had a couple see in the chat, and Aaron obviously talked about double dipping, just so we get a pulse check here. Cornelius Johnson, Taj Washington, Luke McCaffrey. I think someone asked me to check if Malik Washington was available from Virginia, but I don't see him. So he must have gone.
No, he's gone.
Yeah,
I think he's a big PFF guy.
Okay, so he might go higher in their boards. So Taj Washington, I know, is a spot that some people liked his name later on is another value. But this is at a spot where I would say, short of there being an edge that screams at you, I certainly would like to see a safety at this spot.
Yeah, I think safety makes sense. And Mustafa's he's a well-built guy. Obviously, you guys saw him. Like I said, he looks like Greg was saying, he looks like a superhero when he takes his shirt off. I think that he's a very willing player in all aspects of the game, which physicality, wanting to tackle, wanting to be able to, get hands on the football. He's not like the most overly instinctual guy, but I think that that's okay in a really well-coached defense where you are, be tasked to learn how to do all those things, and a guy who's not necessarily going to shy away from learning. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, and plus from a development standpoint, you can then ease him in doing that, and he can play a lot of special teams early on and come in and then develop and learn and see where that goes. As both Rapp has multiple years on his deal, Edwards only has the 1 year deal.
Yeah.
Mustafa has special team reps too. There's tape on him in special teams.
Sure.
He's a heat-seeking missile. So from that contribution standpoint, for him getting on the field early, I'm fine with that.
All right, good. I was hoping it wasn't like 3 or 4 running backs in between there. This is around the time where I start to look, and you mentioned it earlier, Daniel, that some of the size speed combos and some of the depth at running back, I would love to pair James Cook with a Braylon Allen, or I know our producer, Chris Kepner loves Audric Estime, who I did see went earlier in this one. But like that kind of combo is exactly what I would
just
love
take
to
Allen.
see.
Let's move through this.
That's fun. Just do it.
Yeah, just take Allen. That's a fit and a need.
Yeah, checks another box. And plus this range here, 128, 133, 144, they're going to be able to check a lot of boxes pretty quickly. And here's where you get into
McKinley
now it's
Jackson
this
still
vanity
falling?
check of
I'm saying take that, just stack up bodies in the middle, man.
just to have another.
Yeah,
That's a
defensive
value.
tackle.
He shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
No.
Well, and that's part of what you look for here is
I like
there
Logan Lee too. I don't know how you
Theo Johnson. Oh, good lord. PFF, man. PFF, man.
It's true.
I got some things to say.
I
don't- I think
brass knuckles
McKinley-
out of his backpack.
McKinley being there is hard to pass up, but I keep coming up to Logan Lee as like a Sean McDermott guy, Iowa guy. That's
Feels
intriguing.
like that.
He does feel like that. Scroll back down there too, real quick, Greg. Another one that's interesting to me right here would be is Zinter here, just as he shouldn't be this low if it wasn't for the injury. I don't know, like when you have such a good team like the roster the Bills have, and we're not making trades and we're keeping all these picks, that feels like playing with free money to me. You don't need him, and then if he pans out, you have great offensive line depth. So there's a ton of options here right now for us.
So as we opened, we went. So just to recap, and for people just joining the show, we opened with Jackson Powers Johnson with a slight trade down. We then used that pick, or the next pick. We went with Jalen Polk, the receiver. There in Washington. We then at 93 got Dwayne Carter, so a disruptive interior pass rusher and defensive tackle. We then got Malik Mustafa as a safety. So we've checked a lot of boxes, pretty balanced. We now added the size speed combo with a running back to pair James Cook and have that power back in the backfield. So we haven't gone edge. We haven't gone corner. We could double dip at receiver. I don't think it's out of the question that they add another defensive tackle, although then now you'd be talking about 5 active roster guys. And with the contracts for Daquan Jones and Austin Johnson, you'd probably be talking about some level of rotation with McKinley and Dwayne Carter, but that's an awesome problem to have to be in that kind of spot. So now it's really more value. Where are the guys that stand out? So John, I will start with you. Anyone here at corner that is a guy that speaks to you or has value in this range?
Feels like corner drops off pretty quick this year too.
Corner dries out. There's no one there that I'm really in love with. Yeah, go ahead,
Daniel.
So we have 2022 film of Kalen King of Penn State. I know he was not very good this last year. Okay, and I understand that he wasn't great at the Senior Bowl, but we have actual film of him not only disrupting plays, but intercepting the football, instinctual play, physical play, a guy who likes to get his hands on players. Maybe he doesn't, obviously start for the Bills this year, but there's something to work with there. There was an actual time at Penn State where he was a shutdown corner. He came into the season vying for the number 1 corner in the draft type of talk. So like I said, a situation where he's got 3 guys in front of him that one could help him learn. Sean McDermott could help him learn. It would be a really nice situation to develop a guy who put on tape that he can know what he's doing in a system where defenses consistently get the best out of their players every single year.
In that cornerback room, I want to ask you guys while we got you here. Scroll up real quick there, Greg. In the cornerbacks, real quick, it's McLaughlin. Is he more of a fit for the Bills in zone coverage looks? Like he seems like the kind of guy that's already, because I know that's a tough transition a lot of times for cornerbacks coming into the NFL that are going into some zone heavy defenses to play a little bit off ball, right? Like you're always taught to play more man, more press. And he, at least from what I've seen of him, is a pretty good off ball guy and still attacks the ball. Is he maybe a better fit for the Bills and what they're doing?
Probably. I think that he's done a lot more in those split safety coverages, because doesn't he play a bit of safety too at Arkansas? Like he plays there, so you have that maybe slot and safety versatility from that guy. He's a bit taller. He's a taller guy too. So I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not the expert here in the Bill stuff, but from what I've seen from him, he does have some safety cornerback versatility. Who's a guy who will get his hands on guys too.
And
it almost reminds me of like a Christian Benford type.
Yeah. I don't hate the idea. So just a name that I hear come up a lot. We'll start with you, John. What are your thoughts on Taj Washington? I know obviously there was a lot of buzz with the transfers and the different pieces, and now people seem to talk about him more as like a day 3 guy. I think that was kind of surprising for a lot of folks. Is that something that would make sense as a double dip to add a receiver like his with maybe a little bit different skill set than Polk?
I mean, I could see it in one sense because we already drafted someone in this mock with Polk who has that bigger frame, that outside versatility. Taj Washington is small. He's a smaller inside slot kind of guy. I don't really understand making a pick for Taj Washington because we already have like such a logjam of kind of slot receivers, so to speak. So I don't know that would make a lot of sense. I mean, it says there on the screen that he could be a wide receiver 4 or 5 as a depth piece and a slot receiver. That's about how I see him also. So
part of the reason I ask is because of maybe some of the return ability. If that all of a sudden
matters a lot more now.
With the new rules. Yeah, with the new rules, maybe. Yeah, I guess that I'm having to kind of restructure my brain around these new kickoff rules. Then that might be a possibility because he is shifty. I mean, he can move, and if it's gonna lend itself to those type of receivers with the new rules on kickoffs, then he could be able to go back there and return kicks and just create space for himself.
Another wide receiver question while we're here, and it's on the board here. Am I scouting the name when it comes to Luke McCaffrey and wish casting that he's going to be a good NFL player? I am.
Unfortunately, I think that he could be a more of a return guy, scheme touched guy. I don't see him getting much better than he was. His problem is that he played quarterback and he has a quarterback body. He's not as gifted of an athlete, and honestly, that's probably why he played quarterback, because he could move pretty well for a quarterback. Then he made that transition to wide receiver, and it's like, I see why. You're not there, and it's unfortunate because again the name is great, and I think that he's a fantastic person, and he does make some plays. Again, he's got pretty decent hands at the catch point in terms of extending and being able to locate the football, but it's the body and the frame doesn't really do it for me.
And so, who do you guys outside of need for the Bills? Looking at this board, if we're just going best player available, what do you? Is it McKinley Jackson is best player available? Does that outweigh?
I think it's McKinley.
Any need?
I think it's McKinley right now. I think that's a steal of a pick at this point, and to just double dip those needs on the interior. Maybe one of them hits and the other one does. Maybe a rotation going of two really good guys that are able to come in. I think that's just value all day long.
And I think also I was looking, we did lose Kalen King, but still have some of the other corners there too. That if McLaughlin is more of a fit based on what Aaron said, you still have a chance to get somebody there. And again, we're still like Aaron brought up earlier. Once you miss early at edge, it almost seems like, are there any? How about I'll ask it this way? I'll start with you, Daniel. Are there any like day 3 value guys at edge that you think are intriguing spots to go with?
I actually think the guy on the board right now at top, Jalen Harrell, is a guy who makes sense. I think he's a much better pass rusher than Braden McGregor. He's explosive. He has a lot of tools. He's still not putting it together. And honestly, it feels like a kind of someone who could maybe bulk up because he weighed in at 250 at the combine, and he's got over 33-inch arms and nearly 10-inch hands.
I'll give the pick to Aaron. We'll give
Michigan for the win. Let's go, baby.
Let's go.
All right, so John, we've now passed multiple times on corner. Let's take a look when it gets back here to this pick. We'll look at a corner, or maybe this is a spot for a double dip at receiver. Any names here that stand out that you've done some work on, or do we just do another Michigan guys? We'll just pick as many Michigan guys as possible.
You're muted, John. You're muted.
Sorry, it's because I was coughing. I saw Daniel make a really funny face. Go up to the top there, G. Dixon out of Penn State. This is a conversation that Daniel and I have had quite a bit. He's a little bit higher on Johnny Dixon than I am, but I can see it. I think he's really instinctual. I think he's gritty. I think he's physical. I think that he is capable of coming in and being that guy that's able to rotate in a cornerback and help out against slot wide receivers in particular. I think that he he might have a little bit of that kind of fire and physicality to him to be a guy that's able to come in and nickel packages and be physical and rough people up. So I think with a 6th round pick, if we want another corner, I'm totally good with Johnny Dixon.
He's an excellent blitzer too. Excellent blitzer.
He's an excellent blitzer. Yep.
I like that. I like to hear that. Now we're in special teams linebacker territory, and like someone named Steel Chambers. Like I don't know how you could be named Steel Chambers and not be a linebacker. That just seems like such an obvious
fantastic
fit. Or we'll look here, maybe if there's anyone. How about this with the depth of the receivers? Are there some guys who could get pushed down into later day 3 that might have gone earlier day 3 in normal years, but there's so much talent in this year's draft, they might fall down? I know one of our listeners is a big fan of Jordan Whittington, just because of the other talent at Texas kind of took all the shine. I thought he was an interesting one. Are there any other late day 3 guys that you think are interesting to add a second talent at receiver, maybe keeping the return piece in mind?
I mean, that does directly go into Jordan Whittington. He's a guy who played all over the place at Texas as a return man as well, and a scheme touch guy who was a running back at one point, I believe, made the transition to wide receiver, and it shows on his tape. Like, he's a bigger type of physical player. When I say bigger, I mean he plays bigger than his size, and he runs guys over. So from a return aspect, I think that makes sense. I do think he's very similar in the play style of a Curtis Samuel. Like, he's going to be more of the, I'm going to need some space. I run decent routes. Samuel runs better routes. He's a better returner. I think he's an overall more electric player, and I think that Whittington's more physical. So there's also Lededrick Griffin is an interesting name. I'm getting around to watching him. But he tested pretty well, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to pull up his numbers here really quickly, because one of the reasons I even pulled it up is because I actually have tape on him, which is not something I usually get. So I was like, hey, I'm going to watch Lededrick Griffin out of Mississippi State, and not Mississippi State. Yeah, I was right. It's Mississippi State. But he measured, he ran a 4.43, measured it at 5'10", 181 pounds, and not crazy explosive numbers, but he did run his 3-cone and his short shuttle at the combine, which receivers typically try to avoid. But at this point, it's really just trying to find those fits. And I think that if it was a 1-year deal for Curtis Samuel, I think it makes a lot of sense for Jordan Whittington. But it's a little bit more of an investment.
I think there's some potential returnability there.
Yeah, for sure.
The same thing, some of the pieces I actually do, we'll just take it for the representative. I do think that there's a piece of it where late they're going to take a special teams type linebacker, because they lost Terrell Dotson, they lost Tyler Medikevich. They're going to bring somebody in. They obviously brought in Nicholas Morrow, who I think will replace more of the Dotson piece of it and play some special teams, but another special teams linebacker is going to be a piece of it. And I laugh every time I see Steel Chambers' name, so I'm going to
just take yeah.
And then I do think later on you'll see more of a developmental pick at some size combo guy at tackle, because that's all the Bills do. Spencer Brown, Tommy Doyle, Alec Anderson, Ryan Vandemark, just who has the longest arms and is 6'8", 6'9", or something crazy. They just keep taking those guys over and over.
To pound the table, though, for my guy, who we don't have to take him in this draft, but we're going to take him before we're done with these mock drafts, is Kenny Logan Jr. Out of Kansas, is a safety, and this is my draft crush. This is my late get a guy. I think this could be your Taron Johnson, come in, fill in a nickel role. He plays just like Taron, but he's a safety. He led Kansas in tackling. I think he's their all-time leading tackle guy. He might even be an undrafted free agent, but I'm just saying, you can take whoever you want this time, but be warned, we are leaving
at some point, because he's my guy. He is your adequate defensive back crush for
exactly. You get me.
Yeah. So literally, when I go through here and study the day 3 tackle guys, I'm just going to look at the measurables and be like, all right, who's the tallest guy with the longest arms? And I'll figure out yep, they're going to go throw him at Aaron Cromer and be like, here, you go work with him.
It's that guy up top. He's 6'6" with 35 3/4 inch arms. Nearly has 36-inch arms.
That's the one. He's the guy. That's the one that they're going to give to Aaron Cromer and be like, here,
almost 11-inch hand
out of him. Oh my
That's
God.
ridiculous.
Yep. That is the exact kind of guy and it's on top of that, it's one of those positions where you have some potential to sneak those guys onto practice squad too, because if nobody else is going to hey, if you claim them, you have to put them onto the active roster. and a lot of teams will let that slide, and you can then sneak them and get some developmental value from them. So as a recap here, we got to the pick at 30 and had a nice offer for the Ravens to be able to recoup some of that, and we kicked a pick back to them to be able to get us back into the third round. We still got Jackson Powers-Johnson. We got our investment at receiver with Jalen Polk, Dwayne Carter, Daniel's number 2 interior defensive tackle in the third round. Malik Mustafa, safety in the fourth. Another fourth-round pick, Braylon Allen, a size speed running back to pair with James Cook. Then started going kind of best player available. McKinley Jackson, a player that would not be available this late here. That'd be a great value to be able to put him and Carter in that room and have that kind of disruptive ability would be great. An edge rusher in Jalen Harrell, corner Johnny Dixon, a return and versatile receiver in Jordan Whittington, a special teams linebacker in Steel Chambers, and a big project tackle there at the end with Josiah Ziram. John, we'll start with you. How do you feel about the draft class that you put together in your Bills mock draft?
I feel awesome about this. I think that there's a decently realistic chance that Jackson Powers-Johnson is available there at the end of the first round, and I think that he's every bit a player that's worth it. It's not the sexy pick. It's not the Xavier Legette wide receiver or something along those lines. But Jackson Powers-Johnson has all-pro center ability in him. Absolutely. We're seeing what an anchor at center can do for offensive lines in today's NFL, and he has that kind of capability in his game. He would just anchor it for a decade plus, and he and Josh Allen will ride off into the Hall of Fame together someday, and it'll be beautiful. But I think that he would just be a terrific pick there if we're able to do it. That little trade down, which resulted in getting Dwayne Carter, just chef's kiss. Like, that would be just a beautiful scenario for the NFL draft. I love this. Braylon Allen is just a Mack truck of a running back, provides something to the room that we don't currently have. Malik Mustafa, I think he's underrated in coverage too. I think that he's pretty rangy. He's got good ball skills. I've seen him be able to go up and get it and track the ball really well in the air, along with the physicality that he has. I like this class. I really like this group. Jalen Polk, I think, has opportunity to be a plus wide receiver in the NFL, as well as a guy that has kind of inside and outside versatility. He is a pretty good route runner too. This is not just a run straight on the outside and we're going to throw you jump balls. He has ability in his game to move around and go across the middle and be able to track the ball really well across the middle in traffic as well, with really sticky hands. I'd be really happy with this.
Daniel, how about you?
I like this draft, specifically when you're looking at what the Bills like to do. This does feel kind of close to that with some of their, specifically the defensive players. And I know that people maybe aren't as familiar with Dwayne Carter, but I think he can do all of it myself. And honestly, before we get into like the most of the picks, can we stop PFF giving grades for 5th round players that are D pluses? Yeah. Can we stop doing that? Like, why? What are you saying about a day 3 player that is a D plus to draft? Get out of here with this nonsense. I'm tired of it.
It makes no sense. You're defending maize and blue, buddy. You just get out of here with your Michigan.
This B minus to Johnny Dixon, the C plus to Jordan Whittington. Anybody on day 3, stop giving below C's. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
Hey, but Steel Chambers is an A minus.
A minus.
So we got that going.
Exactly.
That's a name thing. Everybody just likes the name.
Exactly. He got an A. His name is Steel Chambers, and
that was like Smoke Monday last year. I was always getting A pluses in the 7th round. That's a great name.
Smoke Monday.
Yeah. John had mentioned Xavier Legette's name. If you guys are interested in an entire breakdown, I actually just did an Xavier Legette breakdown on rgrfootball.com. It's up right now. It dropped a few hours ago. That's only if you're interested in it.
Did you break down his Southern drawl
as well? I didn't. I found it best to keep the draw out of it, because that's a really divisive thing apparently, and people have very strong feelings about it. But
my concern about this draft is I think you definitely have to tag both their names, because I think Bill's Twitter I think it's a good draft, and I think it addresses need, and I think it was a mix of need plus BPA as the board fell to us. I think it's a logical draft, and I don't think Bill's Mafia wants anything to do with logical.
No logical. Trade up and get Roma Dunze. Let's go.
Nothing logical will be accepted, and
no tolerance.
I think Polk is one of those guys who is one of the more underrated because of the high end depth of this class. That
Yes.
could be a guy that goes, wide receiver 13 or something like that. And all of a sudden we look back and like, oh my gosh, how did that guy go 13th out of the wide receivers? I think that regardless of who it is, there's a possibility of that in this class. There's so many guys that someone's going to fall later, and maybe teams get freaked out by the 5th-year breakout for Xavier Legette. And you talk, Daniel, make sure you guys check out his breakdown, because I think that is a player that checks a lot of boxes for the Bills and things that are interesting. He's a guy that, say Jackson Powers Johnson went in between there, he would have been a guy that I would have been pounding the table for, that, hey, if we do a small trade down, or heck, just get stuck at 28, I think he's absolutely in play and a guy that's there. One last thing for each of you guys, give everybody a pitch on why to come check out your guys' show here on Cover One and the draft work that you're doing. We'll start with you, John. Let the people know where to find you and maybe what you have coming up next on the show. Or while he coughs, Daniel, you can.
I got it. Just quick hit. I'm on it. Just one cough and we're done. On Twitter at Jon Helmkamp. It's right there if you're watching. Cover Draft Weekly. Daniel and I have kind of revitalized that over the last few months. We're really excited about it. I think we're off to a strong start, always getting better, always doing more, learning what we can do more of. We're less than a month away from the draft. So from now until the draft, it's just full steam ahead. Tomorrow night's episode's going to be awesome. We record on Thursdays. We drop it on Fridays. We're going to be talking about Bucky Brooks' latest NFL mock draft and kind of dissecting that and the different landing spots and everything. Bills Mafia, our show is not Bills-centric. It is from a national perspective, but I still think that it'll be really good information for you to kind of just learn about different prospects, see how the boards are looking for a lot of different mock drafts, hear your thoughts on it. I'll obviously drop little, this might be in play at 28 kind of nuggets into what we're talking about as well. So yeah, come check us out. It is the Cover One College Football YouTube channel is where you can find that. Cover One Draft Weekly, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Awesome. Daniel?
First of all, thank you guys for not absolutely destroying me tonight. I appreciate that. You can find me on Twitter at InHarmsWay19. And for the draft show, I pride myself on being able to communicate as best as I can and explain things. So last week, we had our top 10 tackles show where we went through and talked about all of our favorite tackles in this class, breaking down a little bit of technique here and there, what these guys are good at, what they're not going to be able to necessarily do in the NFL. So you're going to get a little bit of feel about technique, different prospects, and different holistic player going into the NFL breakdowns. And I try to keep my Chiefs stuff away from it as much as possible, because I do know that some of you like to be in there, and we appreciate all the support that we can ever get from you guys. We're doing a really good job, and John has been awesome adding me onto the show. And I think that we not only have great chemistry, but give you guys good information about everything that we talk about. And maybe I'm biased to that, but at the end of the day, we are doing this for a reason. It's because the guys up top here trust us to do that, and we trust in our ability to do that. So appreciate the support as always.
Awesome, man. I can't echo that enough. Really appreciate you guys jumping on and to be able to go through there. You guys will find their link in the show description here to be able to find more of their work. And I think that breakdown of Xavier Legette that Daniel mentioned is a great intro to some of the work that they're doing, as well as some of the stuff over on the Cover One College channel as well. So appreciate you guys. We'll talk soon. Check it out later. And then Aaron and I'll wrap things up from here. So Aaron, we have now had our first group mock draft. We'll obviously do some more of these as we go along, with some other experts jumping in and maybe doing some just ourselves. How are you feeling some of the different things? We added Will Clapp last weekend, and then Austin Johnson maybe a little more impactful than Clapp, a guy that I think is going to be paired well with Daquan Jones. We saw the official numbers come in for some of the contracts. The numbers look good for your guy, Ty Johnson. Got a nice little chunk of guaranteed money. We saw really cheap, maybe cheaper than expected for Casey Toohill. So some nice numbers coming in with where they're at. I don't think I expect a lot more, excitement on the free agency front. I think it kind of is what it is now.
Yeah, we're in draft mode. Just Bean's movement, shifting his focus just like us. Although they've already probably got their board together. But he did exactly what we anticipate Brandon Bean to do every single free agency, which is give himself enough flexibility in this draft. So these conversations that we're having here during this mock exercise, granted, this is just an exercise and these boards are flawed and there's issues with this stuff, but he's put himself in the position of really having those conversations. He talked about it on McAfee today, that it's not, wide receiver train might be real on Twitter, but it's going to come down to best player available plus need. And a mix of that is what's going to dictate. And he's put himself in this roster in position. Go look at Eric's. Eric's done a great job with that graphic of the depth chart and where the needs are. And there are still a couple spots of red, but you don't feel the need that, hey, we have to really reach or trade up to get any of this stuff. We can sit back and see how this comes to us. And if a trade's available, sure, we can be flexible. We have enough picks. So he's really set himself up for a really nice day or weekend coming up here in a month with the draft to not have to be pressed to do anything. And that's exactly why he's done such a good job in free agency over the past few years.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something here where obviously we shared with you guys tonight all the excitement, what's been going on for our new partnership. We can't wait to roll out more things with our friends at William Mattar Law Offices, introduce some of the new guys here at Cover One with Jon and Daniel, took you through the mock draft, talked through some of the different things. One more quick reminder, make sure you hit that like button on your way out and help us out. We've had a ton of new signups for Cover One OnePass. We're giving away on draft night here as we get to the actual official live show on the draft. We're going to give away a PlayStation 5, Bills neon sign, Josh Allen jersey, some autographed Bills stuff, all kinds of cool things. If you want to hear a little bit more about why to be able to sign up for it, listen to these guys here. Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One OnePass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
All right, Aaron, any final thoughts for the people before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, we recorded that about a year ago, and I feel like we're just as handsome as we, we're aging pretty well, Greg. I'm pretty proud of us.
I got a little more gray in the beard.
Hey, gray's distinguished, and that's still handsome. So,
I'll take it. So we appreciate you guys. The chat was awesome tonight. Really appreciate the introduction that everybody saw for Daniel and Jon. Make sure you're checking out their work. We're really excited to have them aboard here at Cover One. But on behalf of awesome producer Chris Kepner and Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.